What if the French had conquered North America? Have you ever wondered, what if, in the 17th century, it wasn't Britain but France that had taken full control of North America? Would the streets of Washington, New York, and Boston today echo with French, not English? Would the stars and stripes be replaced by the tricolor? This question isn't just fantasy. It's a moment in history that almost happened in the 1600s. France had already built a vast empire called New France, stretching from Canada through the Mississippi Valley down to Louisiana. Meanwhile, Britain's colonies were small but wealthy and trade-driven along the eastern seaboard. If France had won the French and Indian War 1756 to 1763, Britain would have been forced out of North America, and the entire course of world history might have changed forever. Under French rule, cities like Quebec, New Orleans, and Montreal would have become the centers of power. French would be the dominant language of the continent, and English speakers would be a small minority. Religiously, the difference would be enormous. The French Empire was deeply Catholic, unlike Britain's Protestant colonies. This means North America might have become a more religiously unified but politically restricted society, where the church and the crown held absolute authority, leaving little room for democracy or personal freedom. Trade would have taken a different route too. Instead of the Atlantic coast, the Caribbean and Mississippi River ports would become the economic heart of the New World. New Orleans might have rivaled New York as the global financial hub. France, enriched by sugar, tobacco, and the fur trade, could have become the dominant world power while Britain faded into the background. And what about the Native American tribes? Unlike the English, the French generally maintained alliances and trade with indigenous nations rather than enslaving them. In this alternate world, the Cherokee, Iroquois, and Sioux might still exist as powerful nations, perhaps forming a native confederation, a united indigenous state blending European and native cultures. However, French rule would not have been democratic. It would be a monarchical empire, ruled by decree from Paris. No freedom of speech, no elected leaders, no revolution. The American Revolution itself might never have happened, because rebellion against the French crown meant death. Even the spark of revolution that later ignited in France in 1789 might never have been lit. After all, it was America's revolution that inspired the French people to rise against their own king. In this version of history, not only America but the entire Western world might still live under the shadow of kings, courts, and divine authority. What if the American Revolutionary War had never happened? Have you ever imagined a world where the American Revolution never took place? No Boston Tea Party, no Declaration of Independence, no United States of America. In such a world, the colonies would have remained under British rule, loyal to the crown. Cities like New York, Philadelphia, and Boston would still operate under British law. The British pound would be the dominant currency, and London, not Washington, would remain the center of global politics. Without the ideals of liberty and self-rule, monarchy and aristocracy would continue to dominate society. Britain would have exploited North America's vast resources, fueling its empire and military might. The Industrial Revolution might still happen, but under royal control, not democratic innovation. Schools, universities, and government institutions would reflect British order and class systems, leaving little room for citizen participation or social mobility. This lack of political freedom was exactly what caused the colonies to rebel in the first place. Without that rebellion, Britain would never have granted autonomy, and freedom would remain a distant dream. The French Revolution might never have happened either, since it was inspired by America's success. Similarly, independence movements in Latin America would have been delayed for decades. The world would have remained trapped under royal rule, with kings and queens shaping the destiny of nations in global politics. Britain's dominance would have been unchallenged. The slave trade might have continued longer in North America, as no moral revolution would have opposed it. Plantations in the South would still run on slave labor, while the industrial North stayed under elite control. Democracy, equality, and human rights, the defining values of modern civilization, might never have emerged. During World War II, without the United States' involvement, Nazi Germany might have conquered Europe. Britain would have fought alone and likely lost. The world could have fallen under the joint dominance of Berlin and Moscow, creating a dark new order without freedom or democracy. Culturally, too, the world would be unrecognizable. No Hollywood, no jazz, no American dream. Art and music would remain confined to the courts of kings, created to please monarchs, not inspire people. The flame of creativity and free expression might have dimmed under centuries of royal control. In such a world, humanity's progress would slow, not for lack of intelligence, but for lack of freedom. Can a civilization truly flourish without liberty? Could mankind's spirit survive in a world ruled by crowns instead of people? That is the haunting question of this alternate alternate history. What if George Washington had refused to lead? It's almost impossible to imagine, but what if George Washington, the heart and symbol of the revolution, had refused to lead? Washington wasn't just a general. He was the unifying force that turned 13 separate colonies into one nation. Without him, the revolution might have fractured before it began. The Continental Army could have fallen apart, divided by regional rivalries and lack of coordination. Britain, seeing the chaos, would have crushed the rebellion swiftly instead of a united front. The colonies might have surrendered one by one, until the dream of independence faded entirely. Washington's leadership wasn't just military, it was moral. His patience, courage, and refusal to seize power gave the revolution its integrity. Without him, victories like Yorktown would likely never have happened. A less skilled or more ambitious commander might have lost key battles, or even betrayed the cause. Politically, the absence of Washington would have meant no constitution, no democratic republic, and no United States as we know it. The colonies might have remained separate, perhaps forming regional kingdoms or puppet states under European influence. Without the example of American democracy, global freedom movements, from France to Latin America, would have weakened or disappeared entirely. And beyond politics, the world order itself would have changed. A weak or divided America would never rise to global leadership. World War II, the Cold War, the space race, all would have played out differently. The 20th century might have belonged to Britain, France, or the Soviet Union, not the USA. In the end, if George Washington had refused to lead, the very idea of liberty might have been buried under centuries of monarchy and empire. The modern world, with its democracy, innovation, and human rights, might never have existed, and all because one man said no.